values because we have some things in here which again are just these checkboxes, and I think here we're just using the standard Struts2 stuff for that. Yes, we are. Okay, so here's our standard Struts2 values. This is a standard Struts2 form, and we're just setting up some select boxes here, and we have the values coming from our privilege model. Okay, so if you're a Struts2 person already, this is nothing fancy at all. What would be the fancy part here is we have another grid embedded in the tab. Okay, so for all intent and purposes, this grid is really no different than our paginated list that we're using. It will look exactly the same, with some exceptions. One is that we're not using the actual paging. I mean, you probably wouldn't have enough roles here assigned to an application to really have the need to page them. So we don't have the paging turned on here, but everything else will be the same. So we're going to reload it after we submit. We have a before submit to set the model for this. We have an after submit that's going to check the grid operations, because we can indeed go here and add a duplicate. So if we go here, and I think we've shown this already, if we try and add a duplicate here, we're still going to get the same error. So for all intent and purposes, this is no different than our paginated lister. Okay, we have paging on, but in all likelihood it would never actually get used. So we can cancel this. Now if we tried to edit the role, again, we're going to disable, and we're going to just reactivate this. Okay, and so now when we go and look at how we did that, so we have what we're doing here is this is the same with the exception of recreate form true. Now there's a reason why we need to do that. So if we look at the reload after submit is true, and then we have before show form, before show row select. So when we edit the record, right, we want to call this JavaScript function, and what this is basically going to do is disable that select box, so you won't be able to change it. So here's our okay, there's our format status for the list. Okay, now you could take some of these common methods and put them in a standard include for JavaScript if you like. So here's our check grid operations again, looking for record saved, checking for the custom duplicate message, and then here we have before show role. Here's where we're disabling that select box. Okay, and if you uncomment that every time you brought that up, you would see this actually getting executed. And we're using the roll number, which is what it's called, the name field in the grid. Okay, so here's the grid. It's called roll no. Okay, and what we're doing here is we're disabling it based on the form ID that we're getting passed in by JQuery is passing that in for us. So JQuery knows that it's the roll no field in this form, and we want it disabled so it won't be seen. Okay, now the thing is, when you disable something in the edit options and then go back and try and add a record, what happens is they're persistent. So disabling it here will still be disabled here. So let's say you go in and add a record, you'll see the select box and you'll add, then you change a record and make it inactive, and then go back and add a record, that will still be disabled. So recreate form is true basically does just that. It recreates the form every time you add a record. Okay, now the downside to that is it's going to reload the select. So when you create the record, you notice that when you go here to add a record, you get a list of all the roles. Okay, so that select is going to get recreated every time. So the other option here you could do is you would have a before show form for your add option that enables the select box again, and that's certainly doable. So since we don't have a lot of them here in the demo, I opted for this just to show a different way to do it. And like I said, you could also have a before show form and say before show roll select edit, and then in there you would just reverse the disable to enable. Okay, so now the other neat trick we're doing here with the tag is, I think I mentioned in a video, where the columns can also have options. Alright, so one of the things we're doing here now is when we add a new record, we're creating the select box. Okay, so the way we create the select box is we have a data URL, which is basically another Java or JSON call, okay, called roll select. Alright, and what this is doing is making a JSON call to our role select ID, which is JSON role select. Okay, and what we're doing here is just sending back a list of the values to put in the select box. So it's really nothing more than a list of roles and their associated IDs. So we're passing back the role no, which is, in this case is the key, but we're displaying the role ID, which is the value. It seems a little backwards, but I basically took this from an existing table that was already created. So the role no is the actual key, the role ID is the name, and what we're doing here is using this to make the select box. And then when we click the submit to add it, JQuery will make sure that these values get sent back properly. So here we have the role select, and then after we run the JSON call and get back the list of values we want to populate, we then tell it to call this JavaScript method, who's going to then build that select box. So we're going to call get role select. Okay, now this is how you do it. When it's called, it's basically going to take the JSON response, and JQuery is going to pass it in to the select option builder, which is really what this is. So you see here, the first thing we do is the first thing we have to do is create the roles array. This was kind of goofy. If you don't do this, it just will not work. So you're basically saying here, a JavaScript var called roles, and it equals roles, which in this case, which is empty, and if it is empty, it's going to, if this is null, it's going to create an empty array. You need that empty array to make this work. If you don't put this line in, this will not work, and you'll spend days figuring out why it's not working. So here we're just going to get JQuery to parse the JSON response for us. Now, if you put in this, if you uncomment this, you'll see what this actually looks like. And of course, you can also run this JSON call right from your browser if you wanted to see what this looks like. I don't think, okay, let's see. We could take this and cancel that. Put that there. Okay. Well, let's continue on, and I'll try and do that here in a minute. So after you call, it'll automatically call this method. And you see here we're building a select box by parsing the array of roles based on the length, and we're building up options. Now the name you give it here at the end, you kind of have to do this HTML wise syntactically, but the name you give it here really doesn't matter. This could be anything. JQuery knows where you're associating this, and it's actually going to use the name that you've coded here and not the one you've actually put into that select. So it already knows what's going on with that. So this is basically an example of how you would create a dynamic select box, making a JSON call to get the data back, and then calling a JavaScript to actually create the HTML for that select box. Okay, now when we move into some of the more advanced features, we'll see how we can create dependent select boxes where, based on the click here, you can have another select box loaded, and based on the value that's selected here as your key to go read some other roles. So, and then of course here's our what we're using to edit. So when we edit, we're calling this method. This is exactly the same as we did in our person demo. So once again, I'm just showing here how we enhance this to have the second tab. The second tab has an editable grid that can add records and force them inactive. We showed how we can have custom functions that can disable and enable or recreate the form. We also have the ability to run a JSON call that can get the select boxes that we're going to dynamically build on the fly when the editor pops up. Okay, so let me try one more time and see if I can get that to work. So, okay, let's see. If we go back here, and then we click this and we watch here, priv ID is 1. So let's do this one more time. See if we can get this to work. There we go. Okay, now you can open this with Notepad and you'll see exactly what that JSON response looks like here. Okay, so you see it's really nothing more than the models of the roles that we have. So, and it's sending back all the data, and we just have the values that we need. So you see the role description. Let's see what else we have here. Role description. We have the role ID, which of course we need. We have the role number, which of course we need. The role type, which we don't need. But if you looked here in the actual JavaScript that's building that, you'll see that it's iterating through and picking up the role no and the role ID from that array that we got back here in our from our JSON call. So that's pretty cool. And it's really neat that way you can do this dynamically via the JSON calls. And then of course when this doesn't work, you can use this little trick to debug it and make sure you're getting data back and you're getting back what you think you're getting back. It makes it a little bit easier than trying to firebug and debug it all. So you can see this first, and then if it looks okay, then you can run firebug and you can put like you can put a stop point right here and then actually take a look at what's going on, and the alerts certainly help you see you know, what's actually happening. Like I said, you could take out the this here and you can actually see the response text that you're getting back and how the JQuery parse JSON what it did to it. So here you could put another alert for the roles. Okay, so that's it for this one. The next one we'll actually take a look at the application here, which kind of includes a lot of these different things. So when we edit this record now, we have lots of tabs. We're going to add privileges, we're going to add app owners, we're going to add app role owners, and then we're going to have user values that are tied to privileges and roles. And then you see here where we have our dependent select boxes. Okay, so in the next video we're going to go through some of this. This will probably be more than one video. So hope you enjoyed it, and once we get through the next couple of videos, I'll have all this source uploaded at my website for download. Have fun.